Folks. So, situation in Venezuela. We keep been giving you guys updates, but I want to talk a little bit about some of the military coverage that we've been seeing in the media about the situation in Venezuela. I've been watching Ryan Macbeth, watching Preston Stewart, watching a lot of the American male bloggers talk about this, and I absolutely respect their service, absolutely respect their military acumen, but I think they don't understand the politics of what's going on, and that's where I come in. So, look, Republican presidents have been trying to overthrow the Venezuelan government for the last 20 plus years. George W. Bush wanted to overthrow Hugo Chavez. When Hugo Chavez died, Maduro, his vice president, who was even worse than Chavez, ended up taking office. When in President Trump's first term, he tried to overthrow the Venezuelan government and replace Maduro with Juan Guaido, even recognizing him as the legitimate president of Venezuela. Now we are looking at a new casus belli or raison d'etre for military action when it comes to this situation with the quote-unquote drug boats and fentanyl. We have tried using the military to stop drug trafficking in America since the 1980s. And guess what? There's still plenty of drug trafficking in America. This has little to nothing to do with those issues. Because if you want to actually do something about fentanyl, if you actually want to do something about drug smuggling, you would invest money into inspecting the shipment containers that come in from China every day that are full of all the drugs, and only about 2% are actually inspected prior to them entering American ports. You would harden our social safety net to ensure that people, instead of being on drugs, would actually have cheap and alternatives such as treatment programs that would get them off of it, as opposed to trying to stop it with the military in South America. This military action and buildup in the Caribbean is about two things, and two things alone. One, Venezuela has the largest oil reserves potentially in the entire world, and American companies would very much like to get a hold of those. And then two, 2027. So the first one is very clear. America does not want to have to depend on OPEC nations for their oil supply. America is a net exporter of energy. However, if we want to really have energy dominance, we're going to need both the oil supplies that exist in Venezuela as well as Guyana, their next door neighbors. Therefore, America is making close friends with nations such as Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, and they want to establish a puppet regime in Venezuela and in Colombia, so they will be able to control the entire area. That way they can control the drug trade, they can control mass migration, and most importantly, they can control the oil. Secondarily, Venezuela is within the sphere of influence of their suzerains China, Russia, and Iran. Maduro even held up a Huawei cell phone that he said he got directly from Xi Jinping. So yes, we do not want essentially a Chinese aircraft carrier and military base being located that close to the United States mainland. The same idea that we had during the Cuban Missile Crisis when Kennedy did not want Russian nukes to be located that close to the American mainland, despite the fact we had American nukes located in Eastern Europe and in Turkey about the same distance from their homeland. So, the idea of how this will work, best case scenario, the George W. Bush mission accomplished best case scenario for how this will work, would be that you would be able to arm the rebel factions, the Guaido factions, the anti-Maduro factions in the region. Then you just need a casus belli, something like a USS Cole situation, a USS Maine situation, a Gulf of Tonkin situation that will justify military actions and airstrikes against the Venezuelan homeland, at which point in time the CIA special forces have been the CIA operatives and special forces that are already in theater, already working with the opposition, will be able to launch a popular revolution similar to the Arab Spring. And best case scenario, Maduro will simply flee into exile. He'll move to Russia as the Syrian president did, or he will go to another friendly nation with millions, if not billions of dollars in his coffers that would allow him to live out his days in happiness and peace. And we'll be able to establish a fiefdom, essentially, in Venezuela that would allow us to project more power throughout Central and South America. That would then be President Trump to pressure Colombia to do a very similar thing. We've seen the Colombian president be very critical of President Trump. But if you're able to establish those things right now, then you have control of the entire northern part of South America, as well as the agreements he's made with Costa Rica, Panama, and even the president of Mexico with regards to countering Chinese influence within the region. Secondarily, on that point, when you get that far down the line, you're assuming everything's going to work out well. We'll be greeted as liberators. They'll have the mission accomplished banner flying within a couple weeks, and we'll be great. However, we have to assume that the Venezuelan government has everything and more that the Houthis have in the Red Sea. The largest U.S. naval engagement and sustained naval operations since World War II are currently taking place in the Red Sea with the U.S. Navy and a bunch of Houthi rebels in Yemen. We have not been able to defeat them. What makes us think that we can't defeat them in Yemen, that we can stop them with the billions of dollars of narco money that Maduro has in Venezuela? Let's assume that he has the same Shahed drones that the Houthis have been able to strike Tel Aviv with. Let's assume he has Maduro had the same ballistic missiles that they've been able to strike from Iran to hit Israel with. What do we do when there is a nightly barrage of hundreds of drones coming from carrier ships coming towards the U.S. mainland? Because the distance between Russia and Ukraine, where many of these things are being launched, very similar to the distance between Russia, between Venezuela and the American mainland. So, what is our plan when the American mainland becomes under attack? What is our plan for when you have Trinidad, our Cartel of the Sun sleeper cells that are right here in the United States of America? They're right here, able to attack us at any point in time. If Maduro decides he does not want to go quietly into that sweet night, when he looks at the lessons from Ukraine, when he looks at the lessons from Gaza, when he looks at the lessons from the Houthis, and you compare that to Saddam Hussein being hung, to Muammar Gaddafi being dragged out of a hole, to other people who have been defeated by America, who have been assassinated, Maduro may decide he wants to fight this one out to the death. And then you have a Venezuela that's fractured. Because it's one thing to win the war, it's much harder to win the peace. Do you think those cartels that are making billions of dollars in the narco trade are simply going to say, oh, Maduro's gone, let's all start farming soybeans and bananas? No, you're going to see Venezuela split into as many as 12 semi-autonomous regions controlled by various drug gangs. At that point in time, you have to put American boots on the ground, not just supporting the local factions, but to put down a counterinsurgency of well-armed rebel groups that are well-financed and that are being armed by China, Russia, and Iran. Take that one step further. Every single arms manufacturer within, as I call them, the Legion of Doom, that excess of evil of Iran, China, North Korea, Russia, and other nations that met at the giant parade China put on a few weeks ago, just as American and Western R&D has loved being able to test their weapons in Ukraine versus Russian defenses, the Chinese, the Russians, would love to see how their weapons would interact with American defenses right now. Because as Ryan Macbeth always tells us, we will be at war with China within the next 2 to 3 years. By 2027, 2028, we will be in a kinetic war with China. And so they want to have their weapons tested against American air defense. They want to have their missiles tested. They want to get all the information, the ISR, necessary to be able to fight us in the South China Sea and the Taiwan Straits. And the best practice will be by arming Venezuela to attack American resources, to find out exactly what the weaknesses are and how to break through them. So this concept, this idea, this will be a quick, simple, easy operation, in and out. Maduro will leave, will be greeted as liberators. There'll be no more drugs in America. This is military propaganda. This is not any kind of real analysis. What we're really looking at is a situation where Maduro will more than likely fight to the very end. He will not win, but he will inflict massive disruptions to America. And as a result of that, even if he does lose, we will have a fractured Venezuela, very similar to what we saw in Iraq, in the Middle East after America left, which resulted in the rise of ISIS and the Islamic State and the Caliphate. We're going to see that with the drug trade in Colombia, in Venezuela, and in that entire region, but now being financed and supported by major world superpowers in order to find out how exactly they will be able to fight against America in the coming war. So when we are talking about this situation, where we're describing what America's agenda is, we have to do it with clear eyes and without the America, F yeah, coming to save the mother effing day now. That isn't the world we live in anymore. We've seen the asymmetric drone warfare gives everyone an advantage. Don't forget all the drones over New Jersey a couple years ago. We're in a new world, and it's time for us to realize that America can no longer do big stick politics. We have to find a diplomatic solution out of this.